Hello, I'm Robert Holmain, and I would like to quickly show you how to use MuseScore to play back these electronic versions of solos and etudes that I have transcribed for fun and practice. First, go to MuseScore.org in your browser. MuseScore is a full-featured music notation program, primarily intended for creating sheet music to print out, but it also has substantial playback capability of this standard music notation, and that is why I have found it advantageous for this purpose. Go to the download link on the right here, and that will take you to a page that has installers for all the popular operating systems. You are probably a Mac or a Windows person. Choose the one for the operating system you have installed on your computer and save that to your hard drive. Run that and install it. When you first run MuseScore, you should see an arrangement like this. Over on the right is a chat window. I recommend you close that for more screen space. And when you start the first time, you'll see the sample score, which you can play and listen to get some sense of the capabilities of the program, but I'm going to close that for now. To load a file that you do want to play, go up to File and Open, and in the dialog box that appears, navigate to the place on your hard drive where you have unpacked and stored the music files you want to use. I'm going to load one from my collection of Dot-Sauer etudes here, number 11. And MuseScore will load that and display it on the screen. There are three buttons that are of immediate importance. This right triangle button will start the playback. And if you press it again, it will stop the playback. This button here will cause MuseScore to either observe or not observe repeats. When it is depressed, as it is now, the written repeats will be observed. This left-facing triangle button is the rewind button. That will take you right back to the beginning. It is possible to begin anywhere in the score by clicking on a note and then hitting the play button. And MuseScore will start from that point. You will notice a tiny window down here that has this little blue rectangle gadget. You can drag this around, and that is useful for navigating larger scores. This one is not very large, but it is possible to have something that is many pages long, and you could drag this blue frame to quickly get to the part of the score you want to see. That is the basic operation of MuseScore. Load a file and hit play. But I would like to take you through a few of the peculiar circumstances that I have created with some of these scores so that you are not baffled by them when you encounter them. Here is the original music for that Dot-Sauer etude that I just loaded, Dot-Sauer number 11. If you look at this, you will see one very substantial difference between what appears in the original and what shows up in my electronic transcription. I have added several measures to the beginning of this in the electronic version. Here is where it starts in the original, and here is where the original music is picked up. I needed time to get from the computer to my instrument, and I needed some indication of the tempo before it began playing. So this is a standard pattern that I have used on just about every electronic transcription that I have made. There are two measures of a rest pattern, and then two measures of a solid one note per beat, and then one more measure of rest before the music begins in earnest. There will be a full statement of the time signature where the real music begins, and if there's a key signature in the music, that will appear here for the first time also. There are a few controls in MuseScore that you will want to make use of when you're playing these back. If you go up to Display and choose Play Panel, a window will open that will let you adjust the volume of the playback. And I typically have it maxed out, but you can adjust it there. You can also adjust the tempo. You may wish to play along to this faster than I have made it, and you can increase the tempo by sliding this up, or you can make it much slower. Whatever suits your particular need for practicing. There is currently a bug in this version of MuseScore that will make this tempo manipulation fail in music that has repeats, and indeed this particular etude has repeats. However, if you leave this set at 100% or thereabouts, you can also adjust the tempo in these pieces by going to this tempo designation. I always have some piece of text here, which usually is the same as appears in the original written music, but if there isn't, I've just done something like moderato. But if you right-click on it and go down to tempo properties, you can explicitly set any tempo. And I could set this to like 140 and hit OK. And now it will play at 140 beats per minute. And it will successfully navigate these repeats when it gets to them. It is entirely possible that you may not like the electronic sound that I have chosen for a particular score. If you go up to Display and choose Mixer, there is another window that lets you choose the particular sound. On this particular etude, I plugged in the trombone sound, but we could pick a more conventional sound of piano. And now it plays with the piano sound. There's a fair selection of electronic imitations of various instruments that you can play around with and choose ones that suit your purposes. Notice that there's also another volume control here. And as is typical, I have that maxed out. And of course, you can always control volume on the regular default volume control that your computer operates from. Now let me show you a slightly more complex situation that involves more than one voice. Here is an exercise from a collection of cello etudes by Kumar. It looks like a duet, and indeed it is. His intention was that the student would play the top line, and the teacher would accompany him by playing the bottom line. I have reproduced both of those lines, and so it does again appear as a duet. Notice that there is this 5-bar pattern of introductory rhythm, and then notice that the time signature and key signature appear in full at the beginning of the actual music. If I just hit play, we will hear both parts played. However, if you were going to play the part of the student and have the computer play the part of the teacher, you would want a way to make the student part not play, because you are going to play that yourself. Go up to Display and get out the Mixer panel again, and we will see that there are actually quite a few instruments listed here. One of the peculiarities of the cello sound in this particular program is if you choose it, it not only lists cello, but the pizzicato version and the tremolo with the bow version. However, this is the one that we're actually hearing, the regular cello sound. If I want to silence that, I can check this mute box here. And now, if we start at the beginning here and press play, only the bottom line, the teacher line, is playing now, and the top part is being ignored. And of course that works in reverse. We could mute the teacher part. And now only the top line, the student line, is playing. As always, you can change the instrument. We could change these both to piano if that suits your taste. And it will play in that new assigned instrument. All of the Kumar etudes and most of the Dotz appear in this teacher-student duet format. This is probably the thing you will most frequently see in these electronic versions of music I've created. Let me show you another situation that is a little bit different from this. This is a vocalise from a collection by Matilda Marchesi. This is a much more conventional arrangement of solo voice line with piano accompaniment, and for the most part I have transcribed that pretty much as is. Once again, I've added some measures at the beginning to give you time and tempo. Note that these introductory measures that I add to these pieces are always in small notation with small notes and small rests compared to the actual authentic music from the printed page. Another thing I'll note is that typically on these count-off measures, I've tried to pick pitches that are significant for the piece itself. These may have the repeating note may be the tonic note of the piece, or in this case, this repeating G is a note that it's the first note that the solo plays, and that gives you a chance to hear it and perhaps accurately find it on your instrument before you actually start playing the solo proper. It will not surprise you that if you wanted to play along with this with just having the computer play the piano accompaniment, you could mute the solo line by checking off that mute box on the top voice here. But let's suppose that this range was not suitable for your instrument. This was originally written for budding sopranos, and for example, I play trombone. This is way too high for me and in the wrong clef. I would like this solo line to be an octave lower so I could play it on my trombone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select this very first measure of the solo line by clicking on it. Then I'm going to hold down the Shift key on my keyboard, and I'm going to use this navigation gadget to go to the end of the piece. And now I'll select the last measure of the solo line. And now that whole solo line is highlighted. Again, on my keyboard, I'm going to the cursor keys, and I'm going to press the down arrow cursor key 12 times to bring this down 12 half steps for an octave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And now that line is transposed down an octave, but I have an absurd number of ledger lines in some places, and I have the wrong clef if I want to play this on trombone. I'm going to go to this palette of clefs and pick out a bass clef and drag this over here on top of that treble clef. And now this notation is rearranged into proper bass clef notation. It was correctly transposed before, but now we have it correctly transposed and in bass clef. And now I could print this out and play from this, and we could I could play from this to the computer accompaniment, or I could give that to a pianist to play from. Let's say I did not want to merely change this by an octave. Let's say I wanted this in a different key. Let's say that this wasn't quite the right range for my instrument. Let's say that I wanted this music to be in D minor instead of C minor. Let's say I wanted this 2 half steps higher. What I could do is I could, again, I'm going to select that first measure of the top solo line, then hold down the Shift key, navigate to the end, and I'm going to pick the last measure of the piano accompaniment. Now I have the whole arrangement selected, and once again on my keyboard I'm going to press the cursor key. I'm going to use the up cursor key this time twice. 1, 2. And now everything has been transposed into the new key of pitches for D minor. However, we have a lot of weird spellings with accidentals because I have not corrected the key signature. It's correctly transposed, but it's trying to do that in terms of this old C minor key signature. What I want to do is I want to go to the key signatures and grab me a 1 flat key signature for D minor and drag this over here on top of the C minor key signature. And I'm going to do that for each staff. And now that fixes most of it. There's usually a little bit of surgery you have to do in these big changes. For example, sometimes a slur mark may get twisted out of shape, and you'll have to manually fix that. And I will leave that to you to read the manual on how to do finer things like, well, adjusting these slurs that get messed up. It's usually a point and click maneuver, but that's something you'll want to read about. Here's a slightly more not so obvious problem. We have some problems with enharmonic spellings that have happened because of our conversion from C minor to D minor. These A sharps really should be B flats in D minor, and what I can do is I can just select this first measure, and I'll select this measure here, and now on my computer keyboard again, I'm going to use the cursor keys again. I'm going to click up the up arrow key once, and then the down arrow key once, and now these things have been respelled. We have B flats instead of A sharps, and the A's are now regular A's instead of having an accidental A natural in front of them. There probably are some other spots on here that would benefit from that little bit of surgery. I'll leave that to you when you edit these for your own personal use. However, this maneuver does get you the arrangement in a new key, and you could, if you wanted to do this in live performance, you could print this out and give this new arrangement to the piano player, and they would be able to accompany you in this new key that is appropriate for your instrument. It's easy to do this now that this is in electronic form. If you had to manually notate a transcribed arrangement, that would be very, very time consuming, and when you were done, you would only have it in one new key. You can put this into any key with just a few key clicks now that these scores are in electronic form. There is one other unusual circumstance that I should show you before I finish up here. This is from a book of cello exercises by Bukinik. It looks like a quartet, but it is not a quartet. What he has done is written out a shifting and fingering exercise that the student will perform on one string, and then he has written out the notes that would result on the other strings by doing that exact same fingering and shifting maneuver. His intention is the student will practice each of these lines individually. I've transcribed that in a straightforward fashion. Notice that I've added the preparatory notes, and in this case on each line the preparatory notes are something significant for that particular line. Again, the intention is the student will play these individually, so you wouldn't want to hear them all played together. We could use the mute button to silence 3 and leave 1 to play, but we also have this solo checkbox where we can quickly just make one sound. So if I wanted to play along on just the exercise that is written out for the D string, I could hit solo on D string and play that. And play along with that and not be distracted by these other lines playing non-relevant pitches. Here is a similar situation in the Dotzauer cello book. He has written out some simple figurations that happen entirely on one string, and then casually said, practice them on all 4 strings. His expectation is that the student will mentally transfer these fingerings to the other string and play them that way. To make that work in MuseScore, I've explicitly written the notes out, and so it will appear as a quartet again, like with the Bukinik exercises. And I've noted which one is the original, just in case it's not entirely obvious when you're staring at this for staff version. But like before, you can use this solo check mark to make the particular one play that you wish to play along with. Those are the specific situations I thought I should alert you to regarding my own particular transcriptions of these various exercises and etudes. I have found them very useful as play-alongs to keep me honest on tempo and intonation, but now that they're in electronic form, you can pretty much do anything you want with them. If you want to find out more about MuseScore and its general operation, they have a number of introductory videos and tutorials and a complete manual available on their website, and I would direct you to there to get more general knowledge about MuseScore. It has very substantial powers, and it's free. So I wish you well in whatever you decide to do with these.